Stripe City. So we're here today to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals 53-man roster projection. So get ready and hold on to your horses. Let's get into it.
Here comes motion. Here comes the quarterback, Burrow. Looking for a block, and he got it up in the front by Hopkins into the end zone. Touchdown!
Fakes, throwing to the end zone. Wide open is Higgins for the Cincinnati touchdown.
There's the sneak. Burrow gets low, driving towards the goal line. He's inside the one, and he's into the end zone for the touchdown.
Welcome to New Stripe City, a YouTube channel for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and today we're going to be breaking down the Cincinnati Bengals 2021 roster. These are my projections. These are my opinions, what I think will happen after we have Sunday's game against the Miami Dolphins. So we'll go ahead and let's get into it. So as you can see on the screen, you can see that I actually have put together the actual roster here. So let's just get into it, and I'll give you guys some of my reasonings for this. But before we get into that, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. It should be in the bottom right corner of this video. If you can't find it, it should be a red button down there. There is a link in the description. We also have links for if you look for Bengals jerseys, MIGOS shirts, and things of that nature. You can find that in there. And if you're new here, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. We truly appreciate that. It helps grow the channel. And we're also doing a giveaway where we're giving away a jersey of your choice. So if you do hit that subscribe button and you do follow us on Twitter via the link in the description, that will enter you into the jersey giveaway that we're doing once we hit 15,000 subs. So we truly appreciate that. But without further ado, let's get into it. So obviously it starts at the wide receiver position for the Bengals. I've got Jamar Chase obviously making it, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Auden Tate. Those are four guys that are essentially locks for this roster, right? Once you get past those guys, that's where it gets interesting. And honestly, it came down to me between Trent Taylor and Trenton Irwin. Mike Thomas was another guy I felt like would also make the roster just because he has familiarity with playing within the system. But I went with Trent Taylor, and I went with Trent Taylor over Trenton Irwin, even though Trenton Irwin is definitely making his case. I just feel like Trent Taylor is probably a more polished slot receiver that they can use, and Trenton Irwin, it's hard to kind of cast where exactly they would play him, whether it's inside or the outside. So I kind of went with Trent Taylor here. Just my gut feeling on that one. I think that he was a very underrated player. I think if you watched one of the videos on my channel that I did earlier, he was one of my sleepers for this roster. So I think that Trent Taylor makes it there. I think that the Bengals end up keeping 6 receivers. I don't think that there's a need for them to keep 7, especially given some of the competition on the other parts of this roster. So for me, I've got to go with that there. Now, also take into account, we do have IR designations towards the bottom of the list. So some of these may make sense. So right now, I've also got Jonah Williams, obviously at the left tackle position, Quentin Spain, Deontay Smith, both guys that are going to make it as guards for this. Quentin Spain's probably starting there. You got Xavier Su'a-Filo, who I thought originally was in jeopardy of losing a roster spot, but I think that he's definitely making it, especially with the Bengals scheduled to start Xavier Su'a-Filo with Joe Burrow this Sunday upcoming against the Miami Dolphins. So that obviously bodes well for him. Got Michael Jordan backing him up. Got the rookie Jackson Carman also making it, of course. And then Riley Reed, Fred Johnson. These are guys that I just expect to be locks. Close calls, I think you could probably say Trey Hill, but I mean, these are guys that can end up coming back to the practice squad, and I don't think you have to worry about Trey Hill being claimed by anyone else. But those are my linemen. I feel like that is a solid group to bring back. And I think that obviously you have to also count for Hakeem Adeniji, who's on IR. So I think he ends up coming back. I don't know who they would move him for, but at this present time, if he doesn't come back from IR, those are the linemen, and that's how I kind of see it. Then we get into the tight end position. This is another interesting battle here. You got CJ Uzomah, who's obviously a lock. Drew Sample has to be a lock because he was your second-round pick. And then you look at who is the guy that's going to separate themselves outside of that. And I've got it as Thaddeus Moss. I think that Thaddeus Moss is a guy that can play the H-back position similar to Ethan Carter. They actually used him at that position last season. And Thaddeus Moss, with him being friends with Joe Burrow, I think that his position is essentially solidified within this offense. I think that he's made more plays. I haven't really noticed Mason Streck, to be honest with you, throughout the preseason. Didn't notice any of the other guys really stand out. So I think that Moss is a guy that can come in and actually get some snaps. He could potentially actually be on the active roster if they use packages with that H-back role. I haven't seen, now I'd have to review the film even deeper, but I do remember seeing Moss at that position, and I kind of figured that that's where they would play him. So I've got Moss as a third tight end making it. Quarterback, it's Joe Burrow and Brandon Allen. There's no reason to carry three quarterbacks at all. I mean, we haven't seen that, honestly. And I think Brandon Allen, even though I did not like his performance against the Washington football team, I think that he's unquestionably the backup. I don't think that Kyle Shermer is going to challenge him or end up beating him out there. So I've got Brandon Allen there. And then we get into the running backs. This is another interesting position where they have a lot of bodies there. But I've got it as Joe Mixon. I've got Samaje Perine. Obviously, they gave Perine the extension in the offseason, so that solidifies him. Chris Evans is definitely solidified. I mean, he looked like Reggie Bush in the offseason during the preseason. And then you got my man Jacquez Patrick, who I feel like I don't see a reason for you to keep him off of this roster. When you look at Travion Williams has had, in my opinion, 2 or 3 years to really get his crack and solidify it. And unfortunately, he ended up getting hurt. You know, that's obviously out of his control, but I think that hampered him, and I think it opened the door for Jacquez Patrick, who is a big back, has great athleticism. Obviously, you saw that he was able to if I'm not mistaken, have the leading yards per carry for this whole group through the preseason with 7 yards per carry. So I think Jacquez Patrick is going to be a pleasant surprise. Obviously, some people may argue, you have to be able to play special teams. And yeah, that could be a factor, but I think that Jacquez Patrick will be just fine there. And I think that he'll be able to make a roster spot. Might not be active on game day, but Jacquez Patrick, I think, did enough to really make this roster. And then we get into the trenches. And this is where it gets really interesting as well, because the Bengals have had some injuries. You talk about Joseph Asai. You talk about Khalid Kareem being injured. Cam Sample was injured at one point. And here I'm going with Hubbard. I'm going to keep Khalid Kareem, obviously. And then Cam Sample. And then I think that we also signed Noah Spence. So that's really interesting. I think Spence makes the roster as well. And there's some funny things, because if you're looking at the screen, you're probably like, where is Darius Hodge? Where is Darius Hodge? I actually modeled this somewhat off of the Bengals depth chart. They actually list Darius Hodge as a linebacker. So Darius Hodge still makes it. So if you're watching this, be sure to look through the whole thing. So I do have them keeping Hodge, Noah Spence, and obviously Trey Henderson, the acquisition that they made in the offseason. Now, this is where it gets a little controversial, right? I don't think it's too controversial. There's going to be some people that feel like this is controversial. I feel like because the Bengals have been stretched so thin at the edge rush position, that they're actually going to keep less defensive tackles. And that's just my opinion. And I'm going to show you what this trick is that I'm going to kind of use here. So I've got DJ Reader making it as a nose tackle. I've got Tyler Shelvin keeping it as nose tackle. And I cut Josh Tupou. So a lot of people are probably going to be like, Tupou was amazing, this and that. I just really didn't see the need for the Bengals to keep 3 nose tackles. That's what it honestly comes down to. Josh Tupou opted out last season. Tyler Shelvin, is a rookie that they drafted in the 4th round. You have to have a roster spot for him. And I think that that's why he makes it. And then you look at your 3 techniques. Obviously, you got Larry Ogunjobi that you brought over, and you have Mike Daniels. Now, here's the thing. The other thing is that Cam Sample can also rotate inside as well. So even though I only have 4 defensive tackles, I'm still assuming that they will rotate Cam Sample between the edge and inside. I think that he's also going to get some snaps at that 3 technique position possibly as well. So that is why I feel like they will keep about 4 defensive tackles, and we'll look at Cam Sample as a guy that's kind of like in that Wallace Gilberry mode where you can move him inside and outside. So I think that that's what's going to happen there. You get to the linebackers. You got Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, no shocks there. Jermaine Pratt, Marcus Bailey. I think those are the guys that make it. And then you also talk about Jordan Evans as well. I think that that's pretty solidified. You did have Joe Bachie in. You did have some other guys there, Keandre Jones. But I don't think that those guys will end up making it over these guys. I think that these are your linebackers. I think Marcus Bailey definitely flashed in the last game, nearly with 2 interceptions there. And I think that that proved that there is some potential there. He's always been a guy that you guys know that I've been high on. So I think that those are your linebackers there. I also think Jordan Evans is definitely going to have a role on this team. They've said things in practice about him. So I think that that's definitely there, and he's there to stay. Darius Hodge, even though he's listed as a linebacker, will be a part of that edge rush room. So when you're reading this, I know it's confusing, but I just went with the way that the Bengals kind of set it up there. And then that's when we get into the corners, and this is where it gets even more interesting as well, because we have the Trey Waynes injury, and we don't know how that's going to affect it, right? But I'm just going to presume that they're going to keep him on the active 53. I don't see them as of now, I'm not a doctor or anything, putting him on the IR list. Now, they do have unlimited spots, I believe, on the IR designation this season, so they could do it and bring him back. But I've got Trey Waynes making the roster. I've got Eli Apple making the roster, even though he didn't play in the preseason. Obviously, Eli Apple, we kind of know what kind of player he is. He isn't a super amazing player, but he does have a wealth of experience, more than some of the other guys that were on this list that ended up getting chopped off. You also have Cheeto, obviously, is going to make it. I actually moved Darius Phillips to the outside corner position to make room for my big surprise on my 53, which is Jalen Davis. Obviously, they also keep Mike Hilton as well, but I think Jalen Davis has done enough in the preseason, and maybe he can show even more in this Dolphins game, but I think that he's done enough to make them comfortable in the situation where they may have to play without Trey Waynes. They could probably use a combination of Darius Phillips and Eli Apple on the outside. They could bring Jalen Davis as a backup to Mike Hilton on the nickel corner. But I think that your 3 starting corners are going to be a part of this list. Either way that it goes, they'll be able to use some kind of combination. But I think that Jalen Davis, with him being a smaller guy that you'll play and really is kind of restricted to the nickel, he'll be there as, I think, the backup, and I think that you can do some things with Darius Phillips. Well, we'll have to see what they do on game day. And then when it gets to the special teams, no real surprises here. You talk about Kevin Huber, the punter. I think that he returns. Obviously, you have to have Evan McPherson there and Clark Harris. I mean, Evan McPherson has been, kicking his butt off pretty much this entire preseason. A lot of Bengals fans are happy with that selection now. You drafted him in the 5th round. There's no reason to keep Austin Seibert. We'll have to see if they trade Austin Seibert. I personally don't think you can get anything for Austin Seibert based off of talking to Cleveland fans and my man Quincy Carrier. And if you watched our show on AFC North Talk this time last year, there's an entire show dedicated to Austin Seibert of him going off. So if you haven't subscribed over there, please be sure to do that and check out that video. And then you got Clark Harris as well, long slapper. He's always going to be there. And then when you look at the IR list, I just have Adeniji and Osai, depending on what they do, if they do bring those guys back. But we'll have to see what happens. But, yeah, this is exactly how I kind of see it playing out. Now, I'm not sure if it will play out this way or not, but this has been the Bengals 53-man roster projection. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments. And as usual, I'll leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.
Here comes motion. Here comes the quarterback, Burrow. Looking for a block, and he got it up in the front by Hopkins into the end zone. Touchdown!
Fakes, throwing to the end zone. Wide open is Higgins for the Cincinnati touchdown.
There's the sneak. Burrow gets low, driving towards the goal line. He's inside the 1, and he's into the end zone for the touchdown.